whether you are a mom and you are creating childhoods, a builder and you're building homes, you're a mechanic and you're looking to, scale and make more money, but you want to do it without having to do a better job and without having to do a better job of organizing your business or of repairing cars or whatever it is. But we all find ourselves there at some point being like, how do I stay exactly the same without actually growing or maturing or becoming better and more excellent and get better outcome? And you can find yourself envying the success of people who are hitting it while mediocre, which is just not the answer.
Met a ghost of a king on the road when I first fell. Fire burning to my knees I fell. Met a ghost of a king on the road.
Any Christmas presents of note, Nate?
Of note. I mean, it was a lovely Christmas. It was lovely.
Yeah, that's what we say.
And, we were discussing shackets.
Right. We bought our kids
the nuances of shackets.
One of the one of the little cars you can drive around with the little batteries, the V8 battery. It's nice. So that's been exciting. Except I immediately want to mod it now and put a car battery in it and some real wheels.
Make it go.
Make it actually
make it go zoom. I want to make it go zoom.
Yeah.
What I need though is I have a dog that's very smart. We have a lot of dogs, and we have one very intelligent dog. You don't have any intelligent dogs. You have a beagle.
Yeah.
But we've got the door opening dog.
Oh, boy.
And, this is not uncommon. There's a lot of dogs in the world that figured this out. But she especially figured it out pretty young. And the other 3 dogs keep her around because she is smart. And she's going to get it done for them. Mm-hmm. So today I was on a work Zoom. And suddenly, in the middle of my Zoom call, I feel cold. Just very cold. And then wet dogs just come colliding with my legs. And they have a mud room with access in and outside, but she had gone around and opened the front door to let them all in the main house.
Because it's warm in there.
Yeah. It's like, well, it's fun.
It's fun.
I wasn't in the mud room. And so they all came careening over and into my legs, these drenched, muddy dogs. I'm looking down all the muddy footprints everywhere through the house.
Yeah.
And then, finish my Zoom and have to jump right on the next one. But like trying to mute and like quiet the camera, get the dogs back outside, and then move a shocker. Like she's got a little collar on, move a shocker to the front door and
go away.
Like you can't do this. We really have to train that. But I think the thing that was weird is I know I'm getting older when I just don't mind a brown Christmas.
Right.
That white Christmas would have been amazing, but at the same time, we just haven't had winter yet, which is weird. We've had this really long fall. And I keep wondering, like, are we just going to skip it?
Right.
But I know better than that. I know better. This is Idaho. We're going to have 3 to 5 winters. This might be a 3 winter instead of a 5. But we have 3 to 5 winters every single year. So we'll see how this goes.
No, my kids mine are devastated.
Yeah, I understand it. It's like, it's cold, but without the upside.
Right.
And it's really beautiful. But I mean, today was gorgeous, but it's really, really funny how we haven't gotten the upside of the cold yet. Yeah. So what about you, Brian? Besides your shacket, your lovely non-shacket that you're wearing right
the
now.
Shirt, the heavy shirt.
The heavy shirt.
Well, like I said, I got the turkey gobbler, the hen drum, and then also the crow call. So
the crow call.
We're prepping for spring bird.
Okay.
Spring bird.
You shoot some birds.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the plan. Yeah.
Fantastic. So what are we talking about today?
Well, actually, I wanted to ask you why in the world Wicked is so famous. And I know this isn't an area of expertise. What
do you mean?
I'm talking about the musical.
Yeah.
Why is it done so well? That's the
something
question.
has to.
Is there nothing else to watch?
I mean, it's just something has to do well.
And this will transition nicely into a discussion of villains that we've had before, but I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
Especially some of the... I wanted to dig into the villains that you have and your au revoir.
Okay.
Your Uber.
I will say this, when I can say that flippantly, that something has to do well. There are times when everyone's ready to watch something.
Yeah.
It's Friday night, but it's Friday night on a national level. It's the holidays. People are going to go to the movies. They're going to do this thing. And there's nothing there.
Yeah. I mean,
something is going to harvest. Something will harvest. There are movies that drive attendance to the box office, and there are movies that harvest the existing attendance. And if you harvest enough of the existing attendance, it starts to create a buzz. It becomes a little viral. Other people actually go to watch stuff, and it becomes self-fulfilling. But there's a certain number of people that are just going to go to the movies.
Right.
And there's only so many options right now.
Well, what I was going to say is it has a woman with a green face on it. And as far as differentiating on it, at least people remember it.
Yeah.
It's one of, I don't know what's playing in theaters most of the time. I know because I checked to see if my kids could go watch anything.
Is there something?
And there's not ever. But I can remember as you're thinking, oh, yeah, I haven't seen that movie with the green face lady yet.
The green face lady.
Yeah.
That's cute, right?
Yeah.
Like the level of decision making that the average American goes through is not that sophisticated.
Right.
And so that really is, I think, what happened there. And I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It probably is. I haven't seen it. I'm not going to see it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I read the book way long ago.
But when something like this starts to really succeed, the options are it was well marketed, it was well made, it was both of those things.
And it was well placed.
Or it was standing in the right place at the right time.
Gotcha.
And there's a lot of things like that. So when I've talked about cream rising, so cream rises, but other stuff rises too. And so, the other stuff that rises is normally happenstance, luck, and so on.
Right.
I don't know that I've talked about this here, but I'll throw this out and we could elaborate we've had 172 conversations, Brian. I don't remember what we've talked about.
Right.
But
not all of them filmed though, so this could be the first time. Episode
maybe.
172.
Maybe. So one of the things that I could have just talked about this though. That's possible. One of the things that's really interesting to me, and this is harvested from a number of different people that I've picked up and learned from. This is not like a flash of my own genius. This is me doing some collage work with some other people who've had some good insights into industry and business and so on. But it applies to my coaching. It applies to my own work life. It's something I've really hung on to, is that the most competitive space is always the people trying to hit it big with mediocrity. That is the most competitive space. And
okay, as it compared to truly excellent
people striving for excellence.
Right.
If you're really truly striving for excellence, it's actually not that competitive. There aren't that many people who are out there with you doing that.
So you quickly differentiate.
And you're in your own struggle. You're out there pursuing this struggle. And very quickly you look laterally and you see other people striving for excellence. And it turns out usually you see them as allies as opposed to competition.
Right.
You're in the same struggle. Are there things we could team up on? Can we work together?
Yeah.
And it's exciting to find somebody else who's really, really driven and into pursuing excellence. But if you find yourself, and I think we all do at different points, find yourself hoping for excellence of outcome based on mediocrity of input. Now, based on mediocrity of input.
Not one of your most catchy phrases, but I think it's very
good. It's like, this is what we do. And so when you are really, really in intensely competitive spaces where it's scratching and clawing and everything's crowded and there's a ton of you all trying to do it, overwhelmingly, it's people trying to make it big while mediocre. People hoping for excellence of outcome with mediocrity of input. And the fact is, there's always somebody striking it rich or hitting gold or doing something really successfully who did it a total mediocre job. And they keep everyone else optimistic and hopeful. They're like the lottery winner. So it really is a lottery win kind of a thing. Where it wasn't that great. I'm not saying this is what Wicked is. I'm just saying this is something I see all the time. When you see every bestseller list is not crowded with great works. And it's the really crappy books on there that keep the authors inspired. Where they're like, man, if I could only just hit it with something that was a layup, something that was, I could just pick this apple, within arm's reach. I don't have to climb the tree. I don't have to bring a ladder. I can just pick the one that's low, and it turns out it's solid gold. The fact that happens sometimes, it's even worse than that. They're like nosing around in the rotten apples on the ground.
Yeah,
because there's making horrible shows, writing horrible books, making horrible songs. So really bad music, really bad movies, really bad shows, and they're hoping, are we going to have a hit? And it's easier for them to remain mediocre and just sort the filth and hope for the lightning strike than it is to actually step back and pursue excellence in your structures, excellence in your operations, excellence in your goals and in your pursuits and in everything you're trying to do. Like if your goal becomes, I want to make something truly and profoundly excellent, and then you set it on the shelf and it is truly and profoundly excellent, and then it doesn't make any money, it's like, okay, that was never the goal. Now you might want it to make money, but there's plenty of really great things. Shawshank Redemption is one of the films we talked about that came out and didn't do well, but then had this long life, this really long life after the fact, because the excellence shone through and outlasted the moment and, achieved. This has happened with works of fiction. This has happened with bands, all sorts of things.
Is this why there's kind of a fraternity among, A-class Hollywood directors or NBA players?
Yep.
I'm just trying to think of, you'd expect them to be really competitive with each other, hate each other.
Yeah.
But often it seems like
there's more of a fraternity.
There's more of a fraternity.
Because they're the only ones who actually understand each other. And there can be some rivalries there. Like there can be some that develop where people really hate each other.
Right.
But almost always that's an alpha to one tier down. There's this envy. There's this competitiveness.
LeBron to Dylan Brooks situation.
Yeah, I was gonna say Dylan Brooks and Steph. Like Dylan Brooks being like, I can own you. I can come be at your level and I'm going to dominate you. And he's just not going to, it's like Steph is here. And so KD and Steph have a relationship, and writers of a certain tier have supportive and brotherly relationships. Whereas everybody who's striving is like catclawing and really trying to win in the most crowded space there is. And so the mediocrity can show up in your craft, in your approach, in your mindset.
Well, there's a lot of ways to be mediocre.
So exactly. So it's again, I've said this before, there's like infinite ways to drive off a road. You can go off the road any number of places, but just staying on the road and in your lane is one way. But there's any number of ways to fail. But if you are actually focused on really trying to do a fantastic work, if you're a writer and you're trying to put fantastic stuff on the page, you might actually be horrible with your scheduling. You might be horrible with your ideas. You might be horrible with your outlining. And let's forget horrible. You might just be mediocre with those things.
Right.
And if you just have mediocrity there and you're trying to get excellence of outcome with mediocrity of input, and it's really doomed. It just really is.
Listeners of this podcast will be familiar with Black Pill Nate, which is one of our characters, and there's infinite ways.
I'm not familiar with Black Pill Nate. I don't know who that is.
That's when you come up with lines like, "There are a million ways to fail, and only one path to stay on the road."
Yeah, I mean it's true. It's not my fault, but it is funny because I do think even if you say to yourself, "Oh no, but I really want to be excellent," and every artist I've ever known would say that.
Yeah.
But then you find this yearning to have the various places in your life where you're mediocre be forgiven by chance and luck and that lightning strike. And so you might be really good at writing a sentence, but really horrible at organizing your day, at finishing a manuscript, at whatever it might be. And you find yourself still hoping, I hope the gold will still come through despite this mediocrity in me right here. It just won't. You can't plan on it. And it's not to say that it won't ever, it will, but it has a certain number of fixed amounts. Like there's only so many lightning strikes, right? And there's all these people hoping for those. And so if you are a movie that's coming out and you happen to be a mediocre film, again, I haven't watched Wicked, so I can't speak to it, but if it were mediocre, is it possible that it would be doing really well? Yeah, of course.
Right. Okay. And that's where you said something has to do well right
Something has to do well right now, and there are lightning strikes.
Americans are all off school. We like movies. It's Christmas time.
Yep. I remember when 100 Cupboards released on December 26th of 2007, I was pretty upset. Why? Why are we doing that? And I got all the data. They showed me all the things about book purchases and also all sorts of entertainment purchases in that week after Christmas is enormous. So into the holidays and just out of the holidays, but especially after the holidays, there's this like restlessness to go be entertained. We're still kind of resting. Like we're not yet writing resolutions. We're not trying to not be mediocre yet. We're still just looking to be looking to be entertained. And so it's funny. There's just a lot of book sales. There's a lot of movie tickets. There's a lot of streaming that happens after Christmas. And that's, I think, pretty funny, but it did make sense to me. So anyway, as far as it goes, there are people who make it big doing a mediocre job.
Right.
Overwhelmingly, they have something in their operation that actually is excellent somewhere. And then you have luck and happenstance. Mm-hmm. And that's the marketplace that's super crowded with everybody. Everybody's trying to get in.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to get there. And can I get that level of return for that level of input? If I too could get that kind of disproportionate return for this minimal input, that would be amazing. And you can see why that's all very, very crowded. So if you're a builder, you can see people around you where you're like, man, why are they doing so well when they're doing such a bad job? Mm-hmm. And you can find yourself envying the success of people who are hitting it while mediocre, which is just not the answer. Yeah. So for anybody Christian who's doing anything, whether you are a mom and you are creating childhoods, a builder and you're building homes, you're a mechanic and you're looking to, scale and make more money, but you want to do it without having to do a better job and without having to do a better job of organizing your business or of repairing cars or whatever it is. It becomes problematic. But we all find ourselves there at some point being like, how do I get a more disproportionate return for a complete lack of an increase in quality in my input? Like how do I stay exactly the same without actually growing or maturing or becoming better and more excellent and get better outcome?
Well, that's funny you say that about there being excellence probably somewhere in the process. Because I think Wicked had, as the book, it had that. It was one of the very first.
IP, right? The intellectual property is a big piece of intellectual property. Yeah. They did not wildly modify the poster. They did enough to irritate fans and create controversy. Yeah. But the poster is still iconic and recognizable. And then there's this empty schedule that it came out against Moana too.
And it beat Cruella, or it beat Cruella and Maleficent and a bunch of those early ones. It was one of the first responders, and then I think also the guy had he picked a good. We talked about how annoying it is to just pervert stories in I think previous episodes. That takes no work to do that.
Turn it upside down.
But the whole making fun of the Good Witch of the West, Glinda. And it's already written in the story, the Wizard of Oz being a bit of a freak already. That feels like a rich sort of vein of we're going to replace the story and make it kind of fun. And it is kind of interesting to watch somebody who hates the Munchkins. I think it's the same thing for the reason people who don't like Tiny Tim. Munchkins are similar. You're just like, what's up with the Munchkins?
I just have remained, I don't know, dogmatically, stubbornly ignorant about most musical theater.
I do have a question that's
been sitting. So this is not a place where I'm like, ooh, crack my knuckles, I'm ready to go on Wicked. I'm just kind of like,
well, I had someone ask, nap time. Some nice listener wrote in and said, can you tell me, I have to find a musical for our school, and could you ask Nate about it? And she was like, but I don't think Nate likes musicals. And I was like, I don't think Nate watches musicals either.
You know what? Sound of Music, do it.
There you go.
It's great.
Yeah, 7 Brides for 7 Brothers.
7 Brides for 7 Singing in the Rain.
Yeah.
I've seen the classics. Yeah. I've seen the classics. And some of them were even fun.
Right.
But 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. I remember the women were sobbing.
Yep.
That, and even little me was like, Sabine.
Yeah. Sabine.
You're mispronouncing it on purpose.
Yeah.
But it's
that's funny. I think you've even come up with the musical idea.
I do. My musical idea is going to make me incredibly rich because it is not
input.
It's like because it is not mediocre.
Oh,
it's going to be amazing.
Nice.
It's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
this is actually. I don't know. I shouldn't say it into a microphone because I still might want to do it someday. But a buddy of mine and I were in a room fighting with the director, and it was all friendly. We're having this creative fight around a story we were working on that has since been produced, but we were pushing for one part of the adaptation, and he was like, we can't do that. And we were like, it's in the IP. And he said, we can't have everything this way. And he gave a biblical example that resonated, and we both kind of rocked back. I'm like, oh, that'd be amazing. And he's like, you can't make that. And I'm like, but that would be huge. We should do that.
Everybody listening is just desperately racking their mind for the most exciting piece of IP.
So I don't know. I'll talk about it at some point. I'll talk about it if I ever just give up on doing something with it.
Right. Yeah.
Because as soon as I speak it, it just goes, and you
up
can't,
till
you
then,
can't
yes,
control
Nate
it.
hates musicals. You don't have
Yeah,
to
up until I'm making one.
Right. I was going to ask you, we got Severance season 2 beginning to drop. Or I should say the first 8 minutes or whatever.
Are you ready for one of the biggest letdowns of all time?
That was my question. Seems like it cannot but fail.
I mean, that's not necessarily true, but
well, I guess
it's highly likely.
Spent 20 minutes telling me how mediocrity can succeed.
Yeah, it can happen, and it keeps the rest of us super, ambitious for it.
Right.
We're like, that dummy made a bunch of money. Like, why can't I go make a bunch of money?
Well, I think the question I have for you as a writer is, all right, you've done Severance. You already had all the major reveals. You told the story. And
setup.
And then you get season 2. Like, what do you do in season 2?
There's a lot to do, Brian.
Do you think so?
There's so much to do.
But that's going to be her breaking out.
It might be done badly.
Jason Bourning the situation. I don't know.
Brian.
There's a
Severance 2 could be amazing.
Okay.
So if you sit down and you said, okay, is there an amazing option? Or is this impossible by definition?
Yeah, I've learned that there's never impossible to be excellent.
It's not. Right. There are amazing options. There's amazing ways to pull the threads.
Right.
And to develop the characters
make it such
out.
that it's somewhat necessary for them to be in this weird
separated
state.
So let's talk about, have you watched any of Silo?
Yeah, watched season 1.
So
same thing. Season 2 coming out shortly.
I'm in season 2.
Right.
And they're marching, they're doing the Friday drops. It's like it's like 6 episodes or 7 by now. But it has a lot of dumb. There's a whole lot of dumb in that show. The concept is great. Yeah. Concept's phenomenal, and that's where your excellence is. Excellence of concept and some of the set construction. Mediocrity shows up in all these other pockets that are kind of keeping it from being this explosive, immersive, global hit. But it's still big and successful, and it's going to keep going. But there's a lot of...
Just touch on that mediocrity and just how they're executing some of the storylines and the villainy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the suspension of disbelief, things like, okay, if you're going to power off, the fear of powering off electricity in the silo.
Right.
10,000 people in a bunker underground, and you're going to turn off the power.
Right.
And have that level of darkness.
Right.
The panic there, the fear of it, the palpableness of that darkness could have been amazing. And instead, it was very, very faint.
Yeah. I think, because the novel built the world so well.
Right. And so
incredible.
You throw the breaker and it's supposed to be really dark and really scary, and it's not at all. And you can just look around, you're fine. And that kind of thing. There's a really horrible arc about fixing the turbine.
Yeah, that was bad.
In the first season.
And that's why the B characters surrounding.
Yeah.
Those seem pretty weak.
The B threads, but also just the nature of telling these stories where you take a great concept and it's like a piece of chewed gum. Mm-hmm. And you've got this nice, wonderful bubblicious. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, oh man, this is great. This is going to shock everybody with this amazing watermelon. Mm-hmm. And then you pull it to make a season.
Right. Okay.
And it's like you have this great lump at the end and you got this pretty good opening. You just have all this stringy lack of heft in the middle of the season. And so when a show
silo, gotcha. Right.
Yeah, when a show is not fully developed, when they haven't really 100% committed to the concept, then you can have these really weak threads in the middle.
Where they just stretched out, right?
Yeah, okay. And my son and I were talking about it in terms of how cool it could be in the middle, because after 350 years of a civilization underground, the things that would have developed in terms of like weird religions, cargo cult stuff, the desire for religion, there should be an official silo religion, there's not. There should be some kind of religious character there. There would have been pidgin dialects that would have developed in different parts levels of the silo that they could communicate to each other, but the up toppers couldn't understand, but the down deepers actually had their language that they could speak.
Yeah.
There's all this stuff that you could explore, and there's a lot of extra tension and charge that would have given you a lot of heft in the middle of the season, and instead it's very bubblegum.
Yeah,
They're
they
stuck
just had
with
to do
bubblegum.
the reveal.
So if you serve a steak from left to right, there's protein and it's solid, and there's just stuff that you can consume. So Severance did a great job of not just falling off in the middle. It was pretty thick the whole way. Silo is like meh. The middle episodes are
in the romance.
The
romance didn't work too well. I mean, I think there's just a variety. Yeah. It's funny. It's funny to see the novelist have solved some of the problems that then the producers were like, we don't need to.
Never mind.
You solved
this. I will say this too. As far as they go with what they're doing, the single coolest thing about Silo, and this is to kind of spoil it, is the fact that they do a double shift where you sympathize with these rebels. Mm-hmm. You sympathize with them, and you're like, come on, like you're keeping us all in
outside.
here.
Let us out.
Yeah. And then it's like, but it turns out the oppressors are right.
Yeah.
It's like, you're all going to die. You want to throw off the fetters and come out of the silo, and you're just going to die if you do that. But there's this misdirect that is deftly done in the story.
Yeah, that's very cool because we're used to the big brother keeping you down type storyline. But turns out this was the way to survive.
And Big Brother still remains evil for the way in which he's doing it. Right. He just also happens to be right. So he is tyrannic in a totally tyrannical way. He is steering you in this really an aggressive and awful way. And it's actually fomenting the rebellion and causing all this discontent as he's being tyrannical. But he's being tyrannical because he knows the truth, and you're all going to die. And
a failure of utopia. What could the best Silo look like?
And of course, in the middle of this, they drop a couple lesbians, and they try to have this lesbian arc, and it's just.
I thought they tried to humanize the bad guys in a way that felt a little excruciating. I understand that, but
it's painful in the middle. It's painful. The concept is great, and that's so Silo was successful, and there is excellence of concept, and there's Rebecca Ferguson does a great job. Mm-hmm. Not as good as she does in Dune, but she does a great job, and she kind of carries. Tim Robbins does a great job as well. Yep. And so you have these moments of excellence, and then you have just kind of wet tissue paper, in a lot of other things. So the end and the beginning. Filters exist. It does the show needs them. So we've been able to watch through.
But I guess
what's available.
Where we're getting to is that's season 1. Season 2.
Yeah.
Still feels like they have to. I don't even remember what happens in season 2. I'm trying to remember if I read past season 1 in the book. But how do you animate that for back at it again? Do you have to do more world building, or is that easy?
Thanks for reminding me, Brian. They did a great job actually in terms of the need for a season 2. Is executed perfectly.
Yeah.
So in terms of like the trajectory of like being propelled into the next phase of the story, they did it really, really, really well. Severance was executed season 1 at a much higher level in terms of character depth, performance, writing, production design.
Us in and out of the world.
Yeah,
so
the production
well
design, everything. Rickon, the UUR genius, like how that's all done. The self-help.
We did talk about the goat stuff.
Yeah. The goat stuff, whatever. A little bit too much, but still funny. But they did a great job. And Silo actually did a great job propelling into season 2. Right. They did. And they did that as people who did a much worse job with secondary characters and secondary development and stretching the plot across 3-4 episodes that were unnecessary. So you have that. And I think Severance just showed a higher level of skill. So I would anticipate them having taken some of this time that they've taken so much of before releasing season 2
to make season 2
get it right.
To make season 2
So
work.
If they don't get it right in the first episode of like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Then what were they even doing for all this time?
New stakes.
Yeah.
Hopefully new character.
Just a new door, new layer that propels the mystery forward and everything else. So if they suck it up in episode 1, it's going to not go well for them, at all.
But again, there's not a lot to watch right now. It does feel like. It does seem like that War of the Rohirrim may succeed just because there's nothing else to watch right now.
Is it really the Rohirrim, not the Rohirrim?
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Really?
Rohirrim. I'm just mispronouncing.
I'm like, what did they say in the movie?
I haven't watched it. I just watched the trailer.
Yeah, me too.
Rohirrim, I'm sure they did.
I don't know. Am I right?
It's Prime Video.
That could just be
Rings
my
of
childhood
Power stuff. So
I know this could be my childhood speaking. It's Rohirrim in my childhood, but if it's the Rohirrim, I'll have to go learn my lesson somewhere.
Aloha yeah.
I have like teetered on the edge of watching it.
Yeah.
And then I just keep not.
Yep.
So
I
watched the trailer 1.5 times. That's about as far as I've gotten.
Right. I asked Christy, hey, you want to watch that? And she's like, the art makes me want to be sick. So
that's a yes then?
So I'll be watching it.
A buddy of mine sent me a Christmas present, which I should acknowledge on the air as if this were a radio show. Very kind of him. But it was addressed mostly to my SAS self, my SAS personality.
That's the part of you he appreciates.
There is the awards submission DVDs for Rings of Power was part of the gift, which was just ha 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 ha. Then was the abridged copy of That Hideous Strength, The Tortured Planet.
Mm-hmm.
So, which
one
is
of the cool old editions.
Yeah, really cool.
I think
old
you had
super pulpy. Yeah,
yeah. You have a poster.
And so it's a really cool, but it's abridged by Lewis. So he compressed That Hideous Strength. The Americans named it The Tortured Planet, and it's this pulpy, shorter, abridged version. I've never read it. I'm actually looking forward to reading it, and maybe being a little bit scoldy at Lewis for how he abridged it.
Yeah,
but maybe it's actually just Calvin Robinson's abridgment where it just takes out a bunch of the beginning.
Right.
I don't know. We'll find out, but I read that. And then the last one is, trying to remember. It's a book on exorcism, but it's charismatic Protestant exorcism for beginners, basically. But it has it's like,
oh yeah, I remember that episode.
It's like driving out demons for beginners or something.
Yeah.
And he told me not to be insulted by the for beginners part. So I've got those 3 things. There are different things that I've hit in SAS, but Rings of Power was obviously I've made my position clear on Rings of Power. But when I was hanging out with a Amazon TV executive, he was looking out the window, so I have to check for a sniper before I say this. It's like everybody knows it failed horribly. Everybody knows it's awful. So bad.
But they had to make a season 2.
Yeah,
right?
they spent too much money.
Right.
Too much. They had to
So that's the other kind of season 2.
Yeah.
And that's where you just, man, that does feel like maybe the mediocrity. So the mediocrity did not turn into a golden apple in that situation.
No. And part of it is because this is what could have happened with anybody who's got a great piece of IP. You have amazing intellectual property to work with. It's beloved. And so you have this advantage and you're seen as advantaged. Mm-hmm. And if you merge that to mediocrity, you're going to have a large contingent of people who
you're actually
despise you.
Yeah,
they despise you for having not lived up to it. And then you'll have the little group of fanboys who will generally just follow it because of the IP. But
well, I mean, I think we may have talked about this already. Did we talk about the orc family in season 2? Like it felt like the writers were casting around.
Yeah.
Or they're just
you talked about it.
Desperate.
You talked about it, Brian, and I just picked a scab instead.
There was an orc mom and an orc baby in that episode.
An orc baby. Yay.
That to me is still probably my favorite example of a writer just being like, I don't know what to do this season.
Where should we go with this?
Yeah.
We have conjoined orc twins, and we're going to have drama as we go get the orc surgeon to separate them in time.
Will they survive?
Will they survive?
Will they live to fight the elves?
Yeah. Anyway, it's pretty awful. But I do think with all these things, whenever I see anything that's successful or whether I'm working on something, the discipline is always to try to find ways to have every part of the process be excellent.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this in screenwriting in movies. Like the best screenplay of the year could be the worst movie of the year.
Yeah.
You could have really the best performance from an actor, but then a horrible editor, and then sound design, score, all these different layers. You have to hit excellence. Now, you have to hit a certain level, just passable, to get your movie released. It's hard enough just to even get it made, to make it and get it released, that having it be truly excellent in these different things, these different categories, is hard. And where we screw up the most is in the script. Because we've reached a level where you can just pay talented actors and you can just pay talented cinematographers, and you can pay a talented composer, and you can pay them write them a big enough check, and they'll show up and they'll do your movie. But still, like the beating heart of the story itself, the script, the recipe, the blueprint at the beginning
This is Nate flattering himself.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
That's the writer, the most important part of the excellence.
Yeah, it really is. And the thing is that it's funny though, there can be mediocre scripts that become amazing films. Yeah. Because all these other layers of excellence show up. Yeah. But they're pretty rare.
Right.
And when you think about a movie that somebody spent $200 million on, and then you think, but no one cares. Like, I don't care about the characters. I'm watching it and I'm bored. I just don't care.
Yeah.
Gladiator 2, I just don't care.
I was going to ask if
all
that
money
caught the Christmas bump at all from there.
I don't even know. I mean, it's out on streaming already, so probably not.
Oof.
But it's basically, there can be a lot of towers of excellence that are all built on this sandy foundation that just falls away. But just because you have a good script doesn't mean you're going to have a good film. Right. Not even kind of. So that's back to Black Pill.
Right. It made me think about publishing, which nobody else cares about, but it does feel like every layer of publishing has that same problem. Like you could crush it on the inside of a book, and no one will ever read it.
Yeah.
If you do any of the other steps mediocre.
Really, really badly.
And
there are fewer steps, but yes. So
and you can do it too with the cover.
Yeah.
You know, just like crush it on the cover and drag a lot of other things into success.
You can pick the wrong release date. You can market it horribly. You can give it the wrong title.
Yeah.
There's just little things. You
can run out of books. All of these are things that are possible to do mediocre on the way to excellence.
There's many, many, many things that can go wrong. Not as many as can go wrong in the film business.
In a movie, right.
But many, many things can go wrong. And if you don't have excellence of release strategy, of marketing, of design, then it's really unfortunate.
Well, we were going to talk
about, all a writer can do is try to make the pages excellent as they can, and then inevitably you have to hand the baton to somebody else.
Also, isn't it kind of unbreakable? Hope. Like you trying to make the script unbreakable. Yeah. So the characters in there are there that'll work no matter what goes. I mean, is that something you think about?
You can try, but it's not the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So.
Because you could break anything.
Anyway, this has been fun, Brian. This makes me want to go write something.
Oh, that's great. So, well, we were going to do villains, but we're not because you have to go coach.
So we talked about mediocrity too much.
I think I think that's a good way.
For example, if you have a podcast and the podcast is frequently mediocre, then
excellence.
Then we'll just reach certain levels and we'll have our 172 conversations and we'll just hang out here. Right?
No, I think you're thinking of a different podcast. We're on the straight and narrow.
We're on that straight and narrow.
Have we fallen off occasionally?
Never.
Mediocrity?
Never, Brian. Never.
Not once.
Not once. 172 reps. We are 173.
Oh, that reminds me. I need to run through our one of our favorite things for the start of the new year, or at least my favorite things. I don't know if you think about this, is to see which was our worst episode from the previous year, which one got the least views. So I got to give the 2024 worst episode.
There has to be a worst.
Yeah.
There always is.
No one cares about the best episode. It's the worst one that we care about.
Well, this was the best episode, obviously, Brian.
It's the last.
Actually, you know what's likely? It's probably, I'm betting that the worst one is probably the episode we dropped at this exact same spot last year.
Because
this might be the worst one. Time. This might be the worst one.
You think this episode?
This might be the worst, Brian. We're competing for it.
Well, I have you on record now as this is the spot.
Possibly the worst episode of the year. Brought to you by Brian Cole and Andy Wilson.
Mediocrity.
Yes.
Here we are.
Yeah. Some people prefer to be cremated instead of buried, but Granddad wanted to be buried.
You are dying. So am I. Every second, I create more of my past, more decisions, more breathing, more love, and more loathing. All of it slides by into the gone as I grab at more moments, at memories just made and already fading. We are all authors, creators of our pasts, authors of the books that will be our lives. When we race across the wet concrete of time without purpose, without laughter and love and sacrifice, then we fail in our mortal moments. See the past. See your life as the fruit of providence and thousands of personal narratives. What led to you? Lighthearted tales of neighborhood love, great tales of migrations, epic tales of global wars and comedies, dark stories about brothers and murder, tales of rape and grief and persecution. You did not choose where to set your feet in time. You choose where to set them next. Pause, breathe, eyes front. See the future. Do not stare into the fog of distant years. See the crystal choices as they race towards you in this sharp foreground we call now. The future flies at you in a never-ending storm of possibilities. God says create. God says live. Choose. Shape the past. Etch your lives in stone, and what you make will be forever. You are dying. So am I. We march from page to page, and it is our living that takes us toward the end. Children will follow, reading our stories, built on our stories, set in a place and in a time that we helped choose for them. They will be the ones to shut the book behind us. They will dig holes and arrange flowers. They will fill out forms. Cause of death? Life. May it be the truth.
What's the point of the whole Bible?
Kill the dragon!